Hello there, Ben Bowers, the Spirit Specialist, and I'm here today to talk to you about just the second ever single malt whisky release from the Elsham Wold Distillery, which is situated not too far away from where I am, which you'll find out in a second when I give you the background information. So this is the second, the first is here. This is their inaugural release, which was the PX Sherry Cask finish, and this particular one is a rum cask finish, so going in a slightly different direction. And I am led to believe that this is just going to be 3 bottlings in the Flarepath series before they then move on to some other single malt whisky releases. So the PX came out, so it was November 2023, because I was privileged to be at the launch event. This came out just before Christmas, and it's likely that the third will then be probably November, December in 2025, potentially. I know they had issues with tins and the bottles and things like that, but I'll talk about what the third one potentially is going to be, what they're planning on it being in terms of the cask finish. But before I tell you that and what this actually tastes like, let me give you some background information about the Elsham Wold Distillery.
The Elsham Wold Distillery is situated halfway between Scunthorpe and Grimsby, close to the Humber Bridge that crosses the border from Yorkshire into North Lincolnshire, although the distillery is in fact part of the East Riding of Yorkshire and has a DN postcode. It was founded in 2019, but was the result of a previous 8 years of separate research and development by 3 families, the Hamiltons, Arundels and Mordues, in order to create a new spirit brand. Combining skills and experiences, the team first launched a vodka made with King Edward potatoes grown on the Hamilton family farm, with distilling run by Matt Hamilton and Ben Mordue. It was branded Edward's 1902, named after the year of both King Edward VII's coronation and when the King Edward potato, which was named in his honour, was first grown in Louth, just 30 miles away from the distillery's location. Known for their creamy texture, the potatoes produced a rich, thick mouthfeel for the vodka, which was then used as the base for a Yorkshire Rhubarb vodka and coffee and elderflower liqueurs. But there was also the desire to produce a single malt whisky, so Laureate barley sourced from Yorkshire was distilled in Bertie, the still named after King Edward VII's nickname. The Flarepath is the name of the industrial estate where the distillery sits, and is so named as it was previously part of an RAF airbase that was operational during World Wars I and II. As a result, the first 3 whisky releases from Elsham Wold will pay homage to the role of the Lancaster aircraft during World War II and the airmen and women who flew in them. Following an impressive inaugural single malt whisky that enjoyed a finish in Pedro Jimenez sherry barrels, the second release features initial aging in miniature ex-bourbon barrels before just over 12 months finishing in barrels that previously held a rum produced by Ben and Matt using Yorkshire-sourced blackstrap molasses. 215 bottles have been made available with an ABV of 47.4%.
Okay, so as I said, I was lucky enough to be invited to the launch event for their first single malt whisky. Obviously, they've got Edwards as their vodka brand, which is going absolutely brilliantly, and I think it's a fantastic vodka as well as the rest of the range that they do. Ben invited me along to the launch event with my good buddy James McMillan of Macmillan's and Malton, and we kind of co-hosted a mini tasting. But one of the quotes that I used for my tasting notes for the PX has ended up being part of their, when they did a press release to the spirits business, I was the one that was quoted as like with a couple of tasting notes on it, which was a surprise, also quite, a nice surprise, but was just a bit weird kind of seeing my name in there. If you've seen the video that I did the PX, you'll know I was really, really impressed with it. I've been impressed with the Edwards vodkas anyway, and there is a rich texture to it, which I assumed was basically because of the King Edward potatoes that were being used. But weirdly, that silky, rich, almost thick mouthfeel comes through on the whiskey as well, or at least it did on the PX. So maybe it's not the potatoes. And my guess is that it's something to do with either the fermentation, which I think they're doing quite long fermentation on it, and potentially also where they're taking the cut. I think they're taking the cut a little bit earlier on, and maybe just their heart is closer to the start of the run, because that's where you tend to get the sort of constituent parts of the wash as it's distilling, the various points that are evaporating at various temperatures. The earlier you take your cut, you tend to get like a thicker spirit because there's slightly more kind of like oils involved and things like that. I think that's what they're doing, because I think there is a distinctive richness in terms of the mouthfeel on the PX. And if that follows through with all of their other whiskies, it's going to be something really impressive. I did the Diwali, Indri Diwali video a few days ago, and that again had a rich, thick texture to it. And it really, really helps with complexity, the finish, the overall flavour profile. If you've got this weight to it and this rich mouthfeel, it adds this extra dimension, which really lifts the whiskey above quite a lot of others that can come across quite thin. So I'm really hoping that it comes on this. So I was given a sample from Ben, but the reason that I have one of the PX sherry casks, so there was only 150 bottles. Basically everybody that was a launch bought more than one. So I was lucky enough to, how many bottles did I get? Three or four. One went to a collector of English whiskey who's trying to get every English whiskey that's ever been released. One is still aside. I've got 2 packs of the Rarities pack, which contains a sample of this. So I did get 4 because one went to the collector, one went in the sample pack, which is the Rarity. So if you head to www.spiritspecialist.com and look on the tasting packs, and I think it's on the front page in terms of the carousel that's got my kind of like highlighted products. There are 2 packs left, and once those are sold, so it contains this and also some really hard to get whiskies as well. One person from that purchase of the 22 packs, I think there were, I will do a random ballot for those 22 people, and one of those people will then get the opportunity to purchase the last remaining one of this. Although I say the last remaining one of this because I've got another one. The reason I've got another one is that my plan is to, once they've done their Flarepath series and maybe done their first 6, it depends. I might do it as we'll do some of the vodkas or some of the other things that they're doing, and I'm actually working with them on a potential rum project as well. Either their first 6 whiskies or maybe the 3 of the Flarepath and then something else. We'll do a tasting event because there's a load of people that will never get the chance to try this otherwise. So that's why I've got one aside that I might have to sit on for 3, 4, 5 years before I can do the tasting with it, but I think it will be worth it. So as I say, this is the second of 3, the rum cask finish. The third, I believe, is going to be a tawny port finish. Now, I have been to the distillery, like I say, because I'm having some conversations with them about a project with them, and I got the chance to try the tawny port finish in progression, or the whiskey that will be finished in the tawny port cask. Either or, whatever it is, it's going to be really, really good. So let's at least move on to this. So just 215 bottles of this, so obviously not many. It's not a single cask as such because it's been in these miniature bourbon casks. So there is a little bit of blending going on, but it's literally 2 or 3 casks. They don't do distillery tours, but I have put a picture up of kind of like the rum cask that they were in. They do not have many casks, and it's not in a specific warehouse. It's basically kind of in the space that they've got, which is where the stills are and all this lot. So it's not like temperature controlled. It's still, it's a big space because it's part of an industrial estate. There is a lot of temperature fluctuation going on there as well. 47.4%, which the PX sherry cask was 47. So again, not cask strength, but they have worked quite considerably to kind of like get the perfect ABV. The rum, they have made themselves. This isn't a rum that's been bought in. It was blackstrap molasses that was sourced from somewhere in Yorkshire. I don't know exactly where. Basically, they've got some of this rum left sitting around that they don't really know what to do with. And I am potentially, fingers crossed, maybe doing a bit of a bottling myself, where one of the casks they've got is absolutely phenomenal on its own. And for ages, I've really, really wanted to try and make my own coffee rum, basically infused with coffee beans. So keep an eye, fingers crossed if everything kind of comes to plan, I might have actually Elsham Wold's rum available as a cask that was just brilliant on its own, and also an Elsham Wold coffee rum as well. So yeah, look out for that. But this is their own rum, and Ben did say to me that they spent a long time just trying to get the fermentation right, because they'd never really worked with blackstrap molasses before. And they did a fermentation run and went, oh, that's not worked. We actually need to keep it going. They looked at it after 2 days and it was like, it's not done anything. What are we doing wrong? But this is part of what I really impressed with them, is the fact that they are trying and researching and not just throwing anything out there. Ben actually joined a couple of online whiskey tastings that I did with other brands. So I did one with Lockley, and Ben joined it specifically to learn more about what Lockley were doing, look at their flavour profiles, but also ask some questions about, you know, the processes and what the thoughts were and the thinking behind the whiskey and everything like that, as part of his ongoing learning. So it's not just a case of, oh, I want to make whiskey, I'm going to read a couple of books and then I'm going to make it, and whatever comes out, that's good enough. They're really, really thinking about it and really considering what they're doing. And that's what impresses me, particularly at this time when we've got a lot of English and British whiskies coming out from gin producers, etc. And it does feel like there is a lot of producers, not a huge amount, but it does feel like that there are some whiskey brands that are being launched where they're just like, oh, we used a copper still, big whoop. Oh, we've put it in oak casks, same as everyone else. There doesn't appear to be any thought behind it. It is literally, if we put whiskey on the label, it'll sell. Well, the way the market's going at the moment, in January 2025, we're already over the precipice of, the market, we are on a big downturn. So anybody worth their salt that's really paying care and attention, they are the ones that are going to ride it out, because the ones that don't really give a monkeys, they're going to fall by the wayside, because people are going to try it and go, don't like this, not going to touch that. Whereas the other ones, either well-established, say Filey Bay and White Peak, etc., or new distilleries, such as Elsham Wold, that are really considering what they're making, really looking at their flavour profile, and also coming up with a house style that will separate them from everyone else, those are the ones that I'm confident are going to be able to make it. But what about the whiskey itself? I hear you say. I don't, but you know what I mean. So, on the nose, the rum is really prevalent. I wouldn't have said it's definitely a rum, but that rum element really comes through. You've got that sort of brown sugar, not funkiness, but there's kind of like a ripe banana-y note coming through. There's still warmth of malted barley. There's a note of butterscotch coming through. There's even, there's even a slight mintiness that comes through there as well. It's got a freshness, it's got some high notes to it, but then there's still this underlying sweetness as well. It's a really interesting sort of high and low notes of flavour profile that do work. They're kind of separate, but they're still linked. It's not like they're disparate fields. I do like that nose. I like the sugariness that's coming through, but it's strange. It's not a sweet sugariness. It's when you're boiling sugar to make caramel, you get an aroma that comes through that is actually quite bright. It's not sweet. It's not sugary sweetness when you are boiling sugar. You get this sort of light brightness that's coming through. And it's definitely there. There's a hint of banana peel and a slight dry nuttiness coming through as well. It's a really, really interesting nose. And on the palate, that thickness, that rich, thick texture that I get from their vodka, that I associated with potatoes. Potatoes aren't involved in this, obviously. That's carried on through the PX, and it's there now. And if this is going to be a house style, a indicator, a character of Elsham Wold, absolutely on tour winner. Because it rounds everything off. It feels thick, it lengthens the finish because it feels like it kind of coats your mouth and kind of stays there, but not in a cloying way, not in a sugary sweet way. And there is sweetness to this. The rum element is prevalent. It's not overpowering though. There's a lovely toffee note. a hint of kind of like Cheerios malted cereal that's just slightly, it's sat in kind of not warm milk, room temperature milk, which doesn't sound particularly attractive, but like it's been put in milk and it's just sat in there just starting to soften. It's not collapsed and it's not turned into like a sludge, but it's malty cereal that's been soaked in milk just enough to soften everything. So there's that underlying, but you then get this brown sugar element. There's a slight banana-iness coming on, almost like banana pudding, kind of like bread and butter pudding that's had banana custard put with it. In fact, yeah, that's probably as close as I could probably get. Bread and butter pudding that does have raisins kind of studded within. Maybe sultanas, maybe not raisins, but sultanas, because they're a little bit more subdued in terms of that dark fruit flavour. But the custard that's being used is actually a banana custard. So there's like milky, malty breadiness. There's a not red fruit, there's a dark fruit, but it's not dark fruit cake. It's not raisins, it's like sultanas, that kind of like goldeny coloured sultanas, which I think are called golden sultanas. And you get this banana note, you get this rich vanilla, kind of like this creaminess, which is going to be those miniature bourbon barrels, which are clearly kind of giving you that vanilla cream feel going through. It's a brilliant combination. It works really well. It's markedly different to the PX. I don't have any of the PX left to do a side-by-side, but eventually we will be able to do that once I crack the bottles open to do the tasting. But I remember the PX, I loved it. The PX element was obvious, and the PX is very much that dark fruit character. Prunes, raisins, stewed dark fruits, that sort of feel. Really dark, almost black fruitcake, that sort of feel. This, totally different direction, but still maintains that vanilla cream character and that rich mouthfeel. Again, totally belies its age. 47.4. The alcohol content is not overpowering. I do wonder if maybe they could have got away with slightly higher. Maybe just because of the richness of the texture of that mouthfeel, I think would actually still kind of offset a higher ABV, and maybe a little bit more heat might just bring out a bit more complexity. I don't know. You know, they've obviously clearly worked on it, and that might just be my personal preference. I certainly wouldn't go above 50 on this anyway. But you know, you certainly don't need water. Under 50, I'm kind of thinking it should still be working anyway. But this is 4-5 years old, 6 max. Still drinks, and I'd said this exactly the same on the PX, and this was kind of the quote that they used. It absolutely belies its age. You could easily go, this is a rum cask single malt whiskey. Where's it from and how old is it? And you could easily go, Speyside. Yeah, probably Speyside. And I'd say anywhere between 12 to 15 years old, because of that mouthfeel, because of that texture, because it doesn't have that sharpness that people will associate with younger whiskies. It's got this depth, these low notes that you associate with older whiskies. So you could easily do this blind and people going, oh yeah, probably a 12-year-old, a 15-year-old Speyside. Yes, it's not sherry cask, but it's, you know, it's got that kind of dark fruit element coming through, and you probably go, yeah. If you really kind of like, you were into whiskey tasting, you would be looking at this blind and going, well, I get a rum element in there and I get a bourbon element in there, but there's a bit of dark fruit, so it's probably a Speyside that's a combination of bourbon and sherry casks, and then with a rum finish, and probably about anywhere between 12 to 15 years old. No, it's East Riding of Yorkshire, it counts as. Although if you look at it on a map, some people will say Lincolnshire. As far as I'm concerned, Elsham Wold Yorkshire. It kind of has to be, because otherwise it doesn't tie in with what I want to do with this rum project. It's a superb whiskey. 2 for 2, knocked it out of the park. Belies its age, loads of flavour, amazing texture. I really hope they carry on this theme moving forward, because although their output is small, very, very small, I've seen the number of casks they've got. They do not have a huge amount, but what they've got is fantastic. Now you might notice next to these, I've actually got a couple of bottles just there. So I did get a few more bottles of the rum cask because they didn't do a launch event or anything like that for it. So there was a little bit more available, and there's more available in the batch as well. So I did get a case to sell, and I've got, at the point of writing, 2 bottles left, and that's it. 94.99 it is. I got some. James at Macmillan got some. I don't think anybody else did. I don't think. I'm not sure. I've not checked to have a look. But that is it. And then it's gone. I've had people regularly asking me if the PX is still around, and I've had to turn around to them and say, yes, I do have a bottle, but it is for this. And as a reminder, I've still got 2 packs of the rarities, so that will give you a 1 in 22 chance of being able to purchase a bottle. Or just keep an eye out on the website and social feeds for the tasting, but keep an eye in about maybe a year's time, the way it's going. So there aren't many, and I've only got 2 left, but it's well worth it. It is absolutely brilliant. And you can open that and you can give that to your whiskey connoisseur friends blind and say, what do you think of this? Where do you think it's from? How old do you think it is? And I guarantee none of them are going to say English at about 5 years. They'll be saying Scotch, maybe world whiskey, because it's not quite obviously malty enough. But they might pick a different country, doubt American, but they'll say, oh, definitely older than 10. And it ain't. Which is evidence of just how good a job these guys are doing. Oh, it's great. Love it. Absolutely love it. Really intrigued to see how the Tawny Port goes. Like I say, I have had a little sip of some of their kind of like work in progress, and it's already fantastic. And we've potentially got another 6 months to go. And that, again, will take it in a different direction. So you'll actually have a set of 3 in the Flarepath that are different enough, and 2 for 2 are already maintaining this core character, which is giving it its identity and then going in slightly different directions. So can't wait for that. So if you do want to get a bottle of this, like I say, I've got 2 left and that is it. James at Macmillan's might have some left. I don't know. I'm not sure. Come to me first before going to him. So www.spiritspecialist.com. The rarities box is on the front carousel, but if you search for tasting packs, you might be able to nab the last one of those before they go, and then I do the draw to purchase the PX Sherry cask release, or just search Elsham Wold. Definitely have a look at their vodkas. The coffee liqueur is excellent. Even the elderflower liqueur that's been in conjunction with Bottle Green is superb. They're just a brilliant company, and they are lovely people. And I am so pleased that they are just consistently producing brilliant spirits. So that is me done. I shall see you at the next video. Cheers.